we think long term. We want to build relationships with the properties. We want to build relationships with our guides.
What is going on, everyone? All right, get ready to fasten your seatbelts. I just had a great conversation with my dear friend, Scott Brills. He's the owner and the dynamic personality behind Pamoja Safaris. Scott isn't just fluent in Japanese and a world traveler, but he was living this digital nomad lifestyle way back in 2002, before it was cool and before really technology made it possible. We're going to dive deep into how Scott applies his diverse experiences and global perspective to the operational nitty-gritty of his business. Expect insights on recruiting the right talent, leveraging video marketing to distinguish your service, and delivering customer service that keeps clients coming back and again for more. So get ready for a really wild ride and a great conversation. So without further ado, let's get started. What is going on, everyone? I'm here with my man, Scott Brills. I've known him for a couple of years now. I met him at Camp Indy, sponsored by our joint friend, Trav Sherry here. So shout out to any listeners from that community. Scott blew me away the second I met him with just his breadth of knowledge of general entrepreneurship and travel experiences. This guy is like someone I've never met before. I mean, he did a tuk-tuk across, I think, Mongolia or Africa. He's fluent in Japanese. He's done some incredible things across the world, along with obviously having a successful business. So, Scott, I really appreciate you joining up on the podcast. You're our guest number 3. So congratulations.
Nice. Thanks, Steve. Hopefully I'll be contributing to what turns out to be a very amazing long-term podcast for you.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. So for the guests who aren't maybe as familiar with yourself, I'd love to kind of take it back a little bit to early on, younger days of Scott, of when you were still kind of doing that digital nomad, maybe just trying to find your footing. And let's talk about a little bit about your first business venture and what that was like.
Yeah. So how far back to go? So I started out kind of in the digital nomad scene, I would say in about 2002, when there wasn't really a term for it. And there weren't really the tools for it, but I did it anyway because I realized I wanted to travel, and I had a company I just started doing web development and IT. And so I was just looking to scratch my own itch as far as like, how do I make money and not let my customers know that I'm traveling on the other side of the earth? And at that time, Skype had just come out. And so like that was a huge tool, like to be able to use that to just make phone calls. I could attach it to my mobile phone, and then it would just look like I was calling from my mobile phone, even though I'm in Japan skiing, which literally happened in like late 2002. And I think that was the beginning of it. You know, I was still in college at that time. Graduated in 2004. I was thinking like, okay, I'm just, doing this web development thing for the time being, get through school, make some money. Saves me from having to get like a part-time job. I was working at a big box retailer before that. And by the time I graduated, I was set to go to Japan because I'd studied there in my freshman year and I loved it so much. I learned Japanese, and my whole goal throughout college is just graduate quick, go to Japan. A bunch of my friends were over there teaching English and whatnot. But by the time I graduated, my company, had been around for about 3 years, and I was making decent money. I was also in a relationship, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to give all this up to basically extend my college life in Japan, which is basically what English teaching is for a lot of people over there. And I decided not to do it. And instead, I remained in the U.S., and I kept building up my company for a few more years. It was basically just websites, and then eventually went into WordPress websites, SEO, stuff like that. And I would continually say, it went from a few months a year traveling to 6, 7, 8, 9, sometimes 10 months a year traveling. I didn't have a place of my own. My mailing address, my voting address was my father's place, where I grew up in Michigan. And so that saved me a lot of money, right? I didn't have to pay for that. My car was paid off in cash. And so the money I got from that company, I would just use it to kind of, it's more like what you term a lifestyle business. So it paid for me by myself to kind of like live the life I wanted, travel where I wanted, buy what I needed. And I was, pretty comfortable. It slowly, grew as far as like number of clients and whatnot through the years. But then I realized somewhere around 2010, 2011, that this is no longer the thing for me. I was just kind of got a little bit burnt out. A lot of that's my fault. Just didn't have proper systems in place to kind of manage things, and I was, turning in projects late and stuff like that. And there was one
You
big
were way
project
ahead of
that
the
just
curve,
kind of
though, man.
imploded.
I mean, you were before like the 4-hour work week, 10 Ferris. You were like the OG traveler, man. I can't
Yeah,
even
I mean,
imagine. I'm sure tech was limited back then. So what were you doing to kind of keep in contact with clients? Was it just Skype and whatever? What
yeah,
were you
I mean,
the
like,
browser software?
yeah, no smartphones, right? So it was email and then Skype. Like those are the two big tools, and I managed to kind of, keep everyone in the dark that needed to be kept in the dark, because some people would freak out if, they're like, you know, I need my website done, or I need, I've got this problem with IT, and you're over on the other side of the world, and like it was definitely, it's still kind of a thing today, but like back then, people would legit freak out if they knew, you were not in the same town as them. People would be like, oh, can we have like an in-person meeting? And I'm like, well, I'm traveling to like California right now. Yeah, when I'm actually in Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that combined with something like there was another program. I think it was maybe back then it was Log Me In I was using, so I could remotely log into computers, and for my IT clients, I could diagnose a lot of stuff remotely as long as they could turn the computer on and as long as they had internet access. So that helped me with like the IT stuff. My one company kind of did a little bit of both.
Sure.
A lot of some IT stuff and web development.
That's awesome, man. So you're doing this for a couple of years. It seems like you're either losing a little bit of passion or getting burnt out and looking for a little bit of a transition. Is that right?
Yeah, and actually the transition found me. I wasn't really looking for it. I just kind of stepped into it. It was 2010, so around that same time, and I went to Africa for the first time, to Tanzania with my father. It was always on his bucket list to do a safari trip. And so he took me with him, and we spent almost 3 weeks in Tanzania doing a safari with a bunch of other Americans as part of like a group, a package tour. And after that, I decided to stay another 2.5 weeks or so on my own to visit Zanzibar, and then also to climb Kilimanjaro with a friend that was flying in from the UK to join me for that last week. And one of the guides during our trip, while I was there with my father, he really stood out among the other two. So there's 3 guides total for a group of 16. You had 3 vehicles. You put like 6 people in each vehicle. Everyone was racing to his vehicle every morning to get into his vehicle because, they thought, and what I'm guessing is that they saw what I saw, which is that he was very passionate, very knowledgeable, great English, great sense of humor. And his name was Josh. And it got to a point where I was the youngest person of the group by far. And so I would just let people go in his car. Yeah, because otherwise, if it was a race to the car, I would beat them every time. We're talking about a bunch of retirees. And so I gave everyone else a shot too. But at the end, he ended up helping me out with like logistics and whatnot. Remember, this is pre-smartphone. Like, I mean, iPhone was out, but like smartphones weren't really a thing yet, 2010. And so I had like a flip phone with me. And so I had Josh's number, and he helped me out with some of the logistics when it came to like getting to Zanzibar, taking the ferry, getting back, figuring out like pre and post Kilimanjaro. And it just so happened like that last night we were there, my friend and I, after we had done Kilimanjaro, he invited us over to his house, and I ended up meeting his wife and 2 kids at that time, now 3. And I said, man, you're really good at what you do. Have you ever thought about going off on your own and starting your own like safari business or something? And he's like, well, I thought about maybe like starting my own like side company, or like doing like a shop or something like that with to make some side money. And I said, well, I don't know anything about the tourism business besides the fact that like I am a tourist pretty often myself in different countries. But I do love animals, and I see the potential here where I know how to build and manage companies remotely. And I could do that. And I know your target market as well. I could do that, and you could do everything on the ground. We split everything 50-50. And, if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. Like, it's mostly my time I'm putting into it. And from the get-go, it's not like a lot of money. I know how to make the website. I know about online marketing, everything. There's not really a lot I have to outsource. It's mostly my time. So I was like, let's give it a shot. And by the end of that year, 2010, we decided to go into business together, picked a name, Pamoja Safaris, which means, so safari actually means journey, and Pamoja means together. So it's like travel together in Swahili, which is the language there in East Africa. and made a logo. And by 2011, we were in business. We got our first client, and it ramped up slowly but surely because I was still like, this is a side hustle. I was doing the web development company still for a few more years, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, in order to get this to where I want it to be, I'm going to have to shut down, or like pretty much shut down the web development and IT to focus on this, because I just don't have the time to do the two businesses together.
Now,
And
were you
so I
physically
made,
going on these safaris on the early? I know you still do now, but were you going on every safari when this was
no,
first launching?
no. So he was managing that, but it was just a matter of building out the materials like the itineraries and the brochures, and I would manage all the customer transactions and the money. And it was a lot of it was basically just like kind of learn as you went along. Like I didn't know anything. I had to ask Josh a lot of questions for every single thing we were doing. And eventually I kind of found my way around where I felt, comfortable to kind of do a lot of stuff without his input, as far as the non on the ground stuff, where he takes care of our guests, from airport pickup to drop off. But besides that, like, it took a few years. And then 2014, I remember thinking, okay, like, let's do this. And we invested some money in having a friend, Ryan, and his friend Calvin to come over from Detroit, film like a promotional video with a drone. And this is 2014. It was still like very early days of drones. It was like the first DJI Mavic that came out. And so he brought it over. He had never used it. We were like his beta test for this thing, but I knew he was a great photographer. He worked with my friend Mallory on a bunch of travel projects. And so he came over for like a week, filmed this video. We put the money into it, even though like we weren't making that much money out of the project yet. And I was like, okay, this is worth it. Like, let's invest this time, this money. And like, I kind of count that like the end of 2014 is the time where we kind of like switched priorities over and decided like, okay, this is a real thing, and like that's 3 years later. Like it was a very slow build up.
If I can ask, the first year, what did you guys gross as like the first official year in business?
Let's see. I was going to see if I've got a. Well, I don't want to mess up the web connection, but I was going to say like I've got all the spreadsheets and everything.
Yeah. Rough figures, man.
I think in 2011 we had one solo client who Josh had known before. So like that client, he knew him through something, a guy from France, and he came over, and I think we profited something like $2,500.
Amazing. Best year ever. I always say this, man, in any business, the first dollar you make is the hardest hurdle, because now it's like the validation of like all this hard work of like, oh my God, I actually have something. Like someone paid me for a service. Even though it's not the greatest amount of money, it's still like, I have something that someone wants to do. Like my first year was like $30,000 the first year. And I'm like, when I calculated my hourly rate, it was like $4.50 an hour. Something crazy. Like I'm putting so much time and effort to this. I'm not really seeing the fruit, but that's amazing, man. You still kept it going because I think you saw something there.
And it was still tough. I mean, we did not make much more than that in 2012, 2013,
Sure, yeah.
2014. That's what I mean.
Was that
like when we put
in the catalyst of like the video of like, okay, the turning point started to happen?
Yeah. And I thought, okay, like I can either continue to skimp and like just put my time into it without putting money, but I know it's going to grow even slower. And so like, let's go ahead. And I talked with Josh. I said, like, we have this opportunity. My friend is really good at video. Let's have him come over and do this. And even though it's going to probably like zero out our profits up until now, because we're paying him some money, plus we're paying him for both of their airline tickets and for him to ship his gear over and everything, and the cost of doing the safari itself for like a week. Yeah, so like it wasn't inconsequential, especially for us at that time, not having a ton of money. So it was a big jump. I remember like it was November 2014. I remember thinking like, all right, like let's go.
Yeah, that was like the launch pad. So once you shot this video, this marketing video, and I know you have a little bit of a marketing background on it, did you immediately see like some kind of results? And how did you process the video? Did you launch it on different blog posts? Were you on different podcasts at the time, which I know podcasts were still early stages? Like, what was your intent to kind of get this video out to the world, and how did you do it?
So no, and no. We initially, like, we didn't just put it out there. I think I put it on the website and embedded it in our website on the homepage. or at least like a 30-second clip of it. I think the whole thing in total was like maybe 2 minutes, the final edit. But it gave me the like the courage to kind of approach people and be like, hey, we have a legit company. Like, look at this video, because the video was so well done. Shout out to Ryan, shout out to Calvin. The video was so well done that I was like, wow, like I've got a company now, and like it does stuff, and like I am not ashamed to show this by any means. Like, this is legit. Like, no other company has a marketing reel like this. It was that good. And funny enough, we had them back again 2 years ago to do a remake of it. So that was 2014, right? And this is 2021. So I would say like 8 years later, right? Man. Yeah, and whoo, this one's even better. I mean, we had him film 7 different videos, and you look at the 2014 video and you're like, wow, big difference. But even his experience and whatnot in those almost 8 years, huge. And now he's filming for like the NFL and Boeing and University of Michigan and stuff. So like he gave us another great deal to come on over, and like I think like video is such a powerful tool. That's why we're on video right now, right? That it's really easy. It's kind of like a business card. Like I would send someone an email and be like, hey, click here to see like a little preview of what you're going to experience. And I kind of used it like that. So like it was kind of like an awesome business card. Plus it gave me that courage to kind of approach people more and to show them. Because like my website, I was like, it's all right, but like this could be changed. It's always like, I'm kind of a perfectionist. I was always like, I could always like add things, do this. And so I was kind of hesitant to give out the website. I was like, not all the itineraries are on there, blah, blah, blah. But like the video, I was like, I could put that out there.
It seems like you're really good at making connections with the right partners to everyone where it's like all ships rise kind of together. With the operator, boots on the ground, with your videographer team. And also, I've met you in person. You have this inherent ability to make people feel extraordinarily welcome when in your presence. Like you ask genuine questions, give people like you put your arm around their shoulder. Like you're just a generally good guy to be around. So do you think your communication has played a huge role? Because obviously you have a really strong background on the web development and in general entrepreneurship and sales and marketing. How did you know what specific market? I assume you're targeting mainly North America and potentially Europe. Is that your client base?
Yeah, I'd say at least like 80% American. They got a few Canadians in there, but and then the rest is just a smattering of a few from Asia, a few from like Israel, a few from US or from Europe. But yeah, I'd say we target the US. Yeah.
Gotcha. And as far as like the journey, like, walk me through a little bit of the offerings that your safaris undertake. Are you doing like the big 5? Or like I know that you have this excellent operator who's boots on the ground. You're taking on these safaris. What would you say if someone had to book a service is like, this is it. You guys don't miss out on this type of package, so to speak.
Right. So differentiation is tricky in this market. There are, and I went through and I researched this, there's like over 500 competitors. I made this whole like 36 column spreadsheet, and I like researched all this stuff. Like when I had less things to do back in the day, like this is how I tricked myself into thinking I was getting work done. It's just like doing this crazy research project. So there's a lot of competition. A lot of them have like pretty much the same itinerary. So it's up to us to educate our potential guests about why we're better. And there's only a few ways in which we can be better, because there's something that a lot of people don't know. Even my travel agent friends I was talking to the other day, is that everyone's has the same ability to use the same guides, the same properties, the same itinerary, the same vehicles. However, I would say most companies, I know this through experience, most companies over there try to cut costs wherever they can. They're very much not thinking long-term. And so if they could save $50 a day by getting that 25-year-old Land Cruiser that will probably make it, they'll do that. If they can get a more junior guide that doesn't have as good of English or as good, much experience or knows as much about the animals, they'll do that. If they can, shave a little bit of money off the accommodation, because like you don't know, like you're buying this package, and for most people, like they don't even ask like where they're staying, because they're just buying like 8-day package, and they don't, they're just like, okay, like I'm in. But there's a big difference amongst all these, the cars, the people, the accommodation. And so we think long term. We want to build relationships with the properties. We want to build relationships with our guides. The guides, by the way, even the ones working for the highest quality, what are thought of as the highest quality providers, let's say Abercrombie and Kent, Talk, like places like that, that you would think like, okay, like these are the big guys and they're charging, I'd say minimum 10 grand a person for safari. Like you think of a safari, and many people think of safari, they're like, okay, like bucket list thing. I want to do it when I'm retired, when I've got enough money to do it. And that doesn't have to be the case because we're all using the same guides. Like they're using the same guides as we are, except we're actually providing a better experience because they're, either cutting corners or they've got so much business they don't care about, the little details that we're going after. So we make sure that we've got the best vehicles. So like all of our vehicles are maintained after every single trip. We like never have breakdowns or flat tires or anything like that. Because you're in this vehicle when you're on a safari for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. So unless it's comfortable and it doesn't break down and, lose you hours in the day from, trying to get another vehicle or be transferred somewhere else, that could really impact you. The most important thing is the guides, because this guide you're with even more than you're in that vehicle, because that guide is driving your vehicle. He's finding the animals. He's talking to you all the time. If you've got somebody who doesn't have a good attitude, doesn't know what they're doing, lazy, uninspired, it comes through. Like I've talked to people where they've had that happen. You want somebody who's like your friend. You want to be just as excited at the end of the trip about like your time with this person as you are like the animals. Like that's our goal. Like we want to make sure that we get the very best guides. Like I say like the top 10% of guides with 10, generally even more years of experience on the ground. They've got experience working for those high-end operators, so they know how to treat our guests properly. They're funny, they're knowledgeable, they've been to college. We look at all this stuff because I think honestly, like more than itinerary, which everyone can drive along that itinerary, like it's the guide. It's the guide that makes or breaks it. And so we want to make sure that like we pay our guides well and we treat them well and we keep them. If you pay them well and you treat them well, like they will keep working with you. And unfortunately, like a lot of the competition doesn't do that.
No, it's sounding like that customer service and the experience is be all end all in your business right now, where you want your client base to really walk away and saying that was the best trip of my life, because in most cases this is a bucket list, like going on a safari, and being able to venture and see like these type of animals, be close encounters, and to your point, like being felt like they have a connection with their guides. They feel like they're safe, taken care of, they're at good accommodations. With that being said, I mean, what is your ideal client avatar? Are you targeting families? Are you targeting corporations? Like, what is your ideal client base, and how can we help you kind of get after that?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of companies target retirees. They're the ones generally have the money and the time to do an extended safari, a week or 2 weeks or something like that. I want it to be more accessible. Like, we definitely have our share of retirees and older guests, and like we more than welcome them. But I also want to make it so that younger people, maybe couples in their 30s or 40s, or young families and whatnot, can come on our trips also. And so because of we have a distributed team and we don't have a lot of costs as far as like, we're not shipping out thick color brochures, willy-nilly to people all around the country, trying to get them to come with us like a lot of companies do. We're able to save that cost. We pass it on to our guests, and we're able to offer, the same experience as a company that charges twice as much. And, we can stay at the same properties, but also if somebody wants to do it really luxe, we could do that as well. And really the biggest difference between, a regular safari and a luxe safari is just the lodging. That's it.
And I'm going to probably guess the answer here, but are you spending any money on ads at this point, or is this all word of mouth or kind of organic marketing and referrals?
Yeah, so it's we have spent a total of $0 on advertising and marketing in
Fantastic.
13 years. It's not the quickest way to get a company rolling, but that's what we did. And honestly, the organic growth was nice, the slow growth, because it gave both Josh and I time to figure things out as we went along. There were a lot of things even he didn't know, despite working in the industry for almost 15 years at that time. He didn't know how to run his own company, and so there was
Right.
stuff that he had to learn as well. So I'm happy we had that, because if we were just flooded with a bunch of people right from the get go, it may have not ended up so great, as we're scrambling to figure out how to do things. So yeah, we spent nothing. We just, as of this year, have started working with a select few travel advisors, aka travel agents, who are selling our tours, and we give them a commission, based on the package.
Wow. So it seems like you and Josh almost have, ever read the book Rocket Fuel, where you have someone who's the
Yeah,
visionary and someone who's like the operator? It seems like Josh is this operator and you're just like the visionary who can see long-term goals, get the client base in and interested, and he's the executioner.
yeah.
Um, it,
That's having been in business for a while, like I can see, like, that's where my strength lies. I'm the guy who's like the front man. I'm the guy who starts the business, comes up with all the ideas, puts the groundwork in place. But like, do I really want to, uh, be the one doing all that and in the weeds? Not so much. And I think that's really why the long-term viability of the web development and IT company didn't really match up, because I was doing everything. I feel like it's a lot easier for me to be that person, and then for a business partner or employee to do the other things, like Josh is doing right now.
yeah, absolutely, man. I and the same in my business. I'm definitely more of the visionary type, sales, marketing driven, the ideas, and I can do the operations, but it sucks away my energy. It's not enjoyable. Like, it's one of those skill sets that I have. It's
Right.
just, it doesn't get the juices going. I want to get a little tactical here, because I can't imagine how much operation goes into and moving parts are to have someone who books a safari trip, to them showing up and then going through all those motions, make sure they don't get eaten by lions, and returning them home safely with a cool story. How are you tracking all these tasks? So someone books a safari, like, what systems are you using to make sure that they're getting a good experience from day one? Like, what kind of software are you using? Let's get into the nitty gritty here.
Actually, nothing crazy, because our use case is so specific, and there have been over the last few years, like, some companies that have tried to make like safari software and whatnot, especially companies based in East Africa, Nairobi and whatnot, that have seen this market and have kind of come out with some stuff. I looked into some of it, didn't really inspire me. And so we've refined a series of spreadsheets, Google Sheets mostly, throughout the years, and we could even, we're constantly refining them. We're doing better ones, doing, just kind of upgrading our spreadsheets as we go along, as far as like cost tracking and trip tracking and whatnot, and client tracking, like CRM type. But yeah, there may be a better way to do this, but it doesn't really exist. Like, I had a friend, so there's plenty of like travel planning software, not much travel planning software that applies to multi-day trips or multi-tour companies, which is odd, you might think, but it's to the point where my friend in Australia owns a company, and he had to spend like the last year and a half or 2 years working from scratch on a system to fit his company. And he does multi-day tours all around the world, a little bit different than us, but and yeah, he had to just build it in Airtable, and had this other like UX on top of it, or UI on top of it, and took him a long, long time. I think he's got it to where he needs it right now, but I'd love to do that, but at the same time, like, I don't have that time or expertise or desire to really like
Or
want
it
to go
doesn't
there
really seem
when.
like there's much of a need, because it looks like you have something that's working right now. And it's not like you
Mhm.
guys are doing
Yeah, but
tours
I,
every
I,
day.
I feel like juggling like multiple spreadsheets. I've got, the pinned browser tabs open on my browser at all times, so I can just kind of go in there and I find which spreadsheet it is. Like, it works. It's a little bit clunky. I feel like it could be better, but I also feel like the off-the-shelf software solutions either don't have a lot of features I would need, or some of them, like, like a Salesforce or something, is just way too big, and a lot of times expensive for what we need.
This sounds like it's a good business that we can start here, or someone listening. Like if you're listening, start a really good Safari based
or even multi-day tour company in general. My friend's company isn't like the operator, but they run trips, and like I would say, I can't use the software because it's all built around his particular business, very niche. But something like that multi-day tour companies can use to do, like, be a CRM, plan their trips and everything, and probably has like modules that you can like add or take out from the program to, depending on like what kind of business that you do. Like, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I assume when you first launched the business, you've probably increased prices to now because you've gotten really good at what you do now and actually have a system in place. So this is one of my favorite questions. Your first year, you said you brought home $2,500. How are we looking now at the Safari company?
So actually the prices haven't gone up much. Like, we've had a little bit of, we've only basically gone up with inflation and any additional fees that have been tacked on by the government and stuff like that. We started off wanting to hit the sweet spot where it wasn't, we're not like a budget camping safari kind of thing, which exists. We found that that's not really a great market to target, and it's not really a great fit for most people, because you don't really get the full experience. You have to like go to camp.
I feel like that's the young backpacker, 20-something.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not targeting that. Yeah, like that's not our game. We want to be mid to high range. And in order to do that, like, we started off and we said, okay, we want to target $500 per person per day. Like, that is our
very fair
baseline. Yeah. And so, people think, oh, you got to spend like 10 grand to do safari. We're like, okay, well, you know what? We could do Denver safari for half of that. And the trick is to let people know that it'll be, basically just as good as a $10,000 safari. Maybe the accommodation, instead of 5-star, it'll be 4-star. But everything else, like, it'll be just as good. And so that's like the trick that we've had, like, over the years, is kind of refining our message to teach people that, yeah, you can still do this even when you're younger, you don't have as much money. Because I'd say the majority of people I talk to, they have it on their bucket list, right? They're like, I want to do a safari at some point. Like, whenever I'm in a room and I talk to people, they're like, I want to do that at some point, And so it's an easy thing to sell, at least once to a lot of people. But back to your question, 2020 and 2021 crushed us, just like many other travel companies. We barely got any money coming in during those years, had to grab some government loans and stuff to stay afloat. Luckily, our overhead's very low, so that sufficed, and we were able to do fundraisers to support some of our staff and people that had helped us out through the years that were doing really bad over there and didn't have money for food and whatnot. And so we went from 2019 was our highest year, and then 2020 was looking amazing. Had all these like different itineraries out, sent out, getting ready to book some trips, and then nothing. Our last trip was in March, and the people barely got out. Like they finished their tour, and like a few days later, like all the flights stopped. So it was perfect timing. And then we had like some adventurous people. I didn't want to sell trips necessarily. I didn't want to be looked at as irresponsible trying to get people to travel abroad. And even though Tanzania was open, they were only closed for 2 months. They were only closed April, May or so of 2020. But I didn't want to be that guy. So, but there were some people that came to me and they're like, hey, are you still operating? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, hey, if you feel comfortable going and like you want to go, like I will put it together. I'm just not going to put it out there that, we're trying to push people to travel right at this point. So we did have a little bit of money coming in 2020, 2021. Then fast forward to 2022, last year, we had our best year ever. And 2023, it's looking like we're going to double it. So I'm not sure of the money yet, but we're like solidly going to be like solid mid 6 figures, business. And so and like, this is still very early in the game. There's a lot of things that we could do to refine what we've got. And we just finished up posting all those amazing videos we have. We just started working with travel advisors. Who knows? We might actually put some money into advertising, like Google AdWords or Facebook ads or something, and see how that goes. Yeah, so like with what we're doing, we're just doing a company pretty much based on referrals, um, and we just came off of 2 awful years. So for that to skyrocket, and obviously there's like revenge travel and whatnot. People they're like, all right, now I'm going to travel to everywhere
Yeah,
because I wasn't
do
able
it
to.
hard, right?
Yeah, so that's helping us, of course. But I would say, for 2022 to be our best year ever was unexpected, and 2023 to double it is awesome, and I'm looking to do that again in 2024.
Yeah, that dude. I love that stuff, man. I love success stories like this because this is amazing. It's taken you many years to kind of reach this point with 2 years no income, and I was laid off in COVID too. Like I went from 9 to 5 to nothing. Honestly, it was a blessing because it got me into my own business, and this is why we're speaking right now. But yeah, those are difficult years to get through. So would you say moving forward, the plan is to continue to kind of grow your base and just do either more safaris? Do you want to go outside of Tanzania and maybe explore Kenya or other areas as well? And then this is a secondary question. I love to know the difficulties of like taxation and like how you handle payroll for some of the local guys, boots on the ground there too.
So so as far as where we operate, we're always going to be based in Tanzania because that's where Josh lives, in Arusha in the north, and that's kind of the gateway to safaris for many people in Tanzania that fly to Tanzania. So we'll always be based there. We have partnerships with companies in Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya, Zambia, and so we're able to offer trips to other places as well, or combined trips. A lot of people will do like Kenya and Tanzania together, or they'll do like a gorilla trek before or after a traditional safari in Tanzania. And so we're able to do those trips. And, we've worked with some of these partners for many years. And so we know that their quality is up there, on par with ours. As far as the payrolls and stuff like that, it's actually pretty easy. Most people just they charge we have an accountant over there, and for instance, like he charges us a monthly retainer fee so that he can do our books, and then at the end of the year we do our taxes for Tanzania, and he does all those and looks over that, does like an audit, and there's another charge for that. For any other employee, it's usually just like a monthly, once a month payment kind of thing. And I leave that, we'll talk about the pricing, me and my partner, but it's pretty simple. Like, they handle their own taxes over there, and we just put it in their ledger, as a business expense. At the end of the year, any taxes that we pay in Tanzania can be deducted from any taxes that we owe in the U.S. because we are incorporated in the U.S. and Tanzania. And we have to do that because in order to basically accept credit card payments, it was the same over 10 years ago as it is now. You have to have a company incorporated abroad, and of course, I'm in the U.S., so we incorporated in the U.S. because the financial system, it's gotten better. There have been some strides. It's still lagging quite a bit behind. There's no cash apps. There is like M-Pesa and whatnot that the locals use, but as far as like international cash apps, like Cash App or Venmo or something like that we may have PayPal, none of that works there. So it's a little bit tricky. So what we have to do is get the payments, usually via credit card, sometimes debit card, to our U.S. account, and then I have to do an international wire transfer over to Tanzania. So it's basically trip costs, estimated trip costs, plus partners' share of the profits, because we split everything 50-50, minus any expenses or money we're putting away for any business expenses in a different account. And then wire it over to him, and then he gets in his bank account, and he's able to pay our providers and whatnot. And so it's definitely a clunky system that unfortunately has not gotten a ton easier, but some things have, like you could pay for park fees and stuff like that. If you're a tour operator, you can pay online now, and it's less like cash based. When we started, it was very cash based. You had to like go and just like get cash in the bank and like deliver cash here and deliver cash there. It was
Right,
very
it's all
clunky.
and my mother was Moroccan, so I'm very familiar with how bureaucratic it can be. And I remember we were going on a tour there, and we had to like pay someone off to get like whatever permit we needed to go into like the Sahara Desert. It's gotten a lot better now, but have you ever had an experience with any type of corruption or someone trying to shake you guys down to get into areas? I would imagine that at this probably this particular tourist spot they have probably a well organized machine, I would hope at this point. But
Yeah, honestly, doing business in Tanzania is great. It used to be a British colony, and before that, German colony, and I think before that, a British colony again. So the language of business is English. The national language is Kiswahili. So, but the language of business and language, of course, of tourism is English. So that makes doing business very easy. All the like paperwork to start a company and everything is in English. So that's great for me. And the level of corruption is at our level, we don't see corruption. There is none that we deal with like on a day-to-day basis. The most I've seen is sometimes I've seen people on occasion like pay off a policeman to get out of a ticket, but like
sure,
like we're talking very low level.
low level, yeah, not like high level.
Right, and
Yeah,
I'm
you know,
sure
it's
like there's
great.
corruption in every government. I'm sure it's there.
Oh, United States
But
too,
as
man.
yeah, like in the U.S. as well. Like it doesn't matter what country. Like there's corruption. It's a fact of life, being human. But we don't run into it. So yeah, I've got to say, it's great. I hear things, about the government. Depending, the government's changed over a few times since we've operated there, and there's always, people always have something to say about the current government. But yeah, it's been relatively painless compared to, I'm sure, like a lot of other countries.
Oh, I'm sure, man. One question I have, this is more my own curiosity, and this I think could help anyone who's going on your safaris. What is appropriate to tip your porter? Like, what's considered like a good value? Because these guys really bust their butt, and they really, really are like they make this whole thing happen, especially on the hikes to Kilimanjaro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with our treks up Kilimanjaro and with safaris, a few years ago, I think 2018, we decided to incorporate all gratuity. So that goes towards our mission of attracting and keeping the best talent. Is if they know how much they're going to get paid and they get paid that in a timely manner, they're going to be happy, because a lot of companies don't do that. So we let them know, like, hey, you will make this much money off the trip. And we tell our guests that base gratuity is included in all of the adventures that we offer. If you feel like any team member's gone above and beyond the call of duty, feel free to have some money on hand to give them a little bit extra. That applies to the safari as well as Kilimanjaro. Like, there's sometimes like a guy in Kilimanjaro, like at the end of the day, he'll like take your boots and he'll like, brush them off and clean them up and everything, get all the mud out of them. Like they don't have to do that, but like some guys will take it upon themselves. I'm sure that they know that there may be a cash reward in it for them at the end of the trip. But that's fine. Hey, they're being entrepreneurial about it. But I let them know, like, bring some cash just in case you feel called to give some money to somebody who you thought like really made your trip special. But I tell them, like, we're paying them a very competitive wage, and if you don't bring any money to tip them or anything, like, they're not going to be sad. They're not going to try to push you to give them tips or anything like that. They're set. They're happy with what they're getting.
That's great, man. That's great. That's really honorable too. It's upfront. I think you'll have employee retention for sure that way.
So and I know, like, from experience, like I climbed Kilimanjaro, before I had my own company. I dealt with that, like having to bring a bunch of like dollars with me in different envelopes and awkwardly passing it out to each like group of like the porters and the chefs and the guides as they were like standing in front of me at the like last day. I had to carry all this cash with me, and like it was awkward and it was icky. I didn't like it. And so I'm trying, and like I know most other people will feel that way, and also secondarily, many people over there love Americans because Americans tip. They tip. However, a lot of other cultures, and it's not their fault, like they're not used to tipping or they don't tip at all. They may know that they have to tip, but like it's not going to be as much, right? And so that's how we ensure that everyone gets a very competitive wage, is that we build it right in, and we don't make the client feel uncomfortable or doing like that whole charade at the end of Kilimanjaro or at the end of your safari.
No, and even me, when I travel abroad, I'm still tipping, even if I'm in a restaurant in Morocco or France or whatever it is, even if it's not part of the culture, just because it's the appreciation of a good service there, especially these guys. I mean, they're busting their butts in like really, really intense temperatures, I'm sure too. So well deserved.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure there's a lot of people that do end up tipping a little bit extra, and that's fine. But I stress that it's not, you do not need to tip anybody. Like I want to make sure that all of our guests know that.
Yeah, and it eases their burden, to your point of like not having to like carry this chunk of change on them of like, oh, well, I want to give it to this guy, but can you spread it to the chef too? And they're all
Yeah,
exactly.
a lot of
Who
people
needs that?
like for Kilimanjaro, like I didn't have enough like small bills, and then like, hey, can you like change this? And then it's like none of the cash apps work, so you can't do that, and checks
Yeah,
don't
there's no
work.
Venmo,
And so
right?
people would like not have the cash, or like they couldn't find an ATM, or they don't have their bank card, the bank card doesn't work, or they'd have to like go home and they're like, hey, can I send you a check to put in your account? And then you send the money over to Tanzania, and then someone in Tanzania finds this guy after the fact and like gives them the money. Like it's not like a super easy process. That's why we just include it.
Yeah, that's I would be 100% with you there, Scott. So looking back now, if you had to start over and do this from day one again, you and Josh just connected, what would you do different? And what can someone else who wants to get into the service business, not necessarily safaris, but if they want to get into something where they're providing a service where it's not a brick and mortar store per se, what would you tell that person and how would you do it differently?
I mean, I'd say if you have the money, definitely invest it in trying out like a few different ad campaigns on Google or Facebook, depending on like what audience you want to read or sell to. If you got the money, and if you don't know how to do it, it may be worth paying someone that knows how, because otherwise you're just going to waste the money trying different ad campaigns where you don't know what you're doing. Because it can get pretty complicated when you get in the weeds with those systems. That's always great when you start a business, you've got money to invest into it. But like at the time, neither myself nor Josh had that money. And so, we just went forward and like eventually we were able to build it up via referrals. But like that would have been great had we been able to do that, especially because at the time, like the cost per click of a lot of these advertisers was pretty low, and the competition was also pretty low. It would have been great to get in a little bit earlier and build up the company quicker. But then just goes right back to what I said about like if we got an onslaught of business, would we have been able to keep up with it? Not sure.
Yeah, exactly. I was the marathon approach definitely works for small business owners that aren't venture capital backed or have like some kind of private equity shareholder coming in. I think you're doing it right. I think that you guys will for sure be very successful. I know you're going to hit that 7-figure mark soon, man, because you're getting there. And it's not even just, obviously for us, it's not about the money. It's about creating these experiences for our clientele. And you seem to have such a great passion for making sure it's curated, making sure the trucks are well supplied, making sure that as soon as they come off the plane, they're greeted, having like the lodging taken care of, really making it where like the only thing that they're there for is to experience the wildness of Africa, right? I know I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait in the next year or two. I'm definitely going to be part of one of those tours. I have a 2-month-old now, so he's got to grow up a little bit.
Excuses. Whatever.
Yeah, I know. It might be I joked with my wife. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just go solo. I'm like, I met this really cool guy, Scott. He's like, well, what about me? I want to go on a safari. I'm like, yeah, but maybe like when the kids are 10. She's like, no, I want to do it now.
That's what Travis had to do. Travis Shea from Location Indie.
Yeah.
Like he went. We put
her.
together a special trip for the Camp Indie for Location Indie, his community last year. And he went and his wife Heather stayed home, watched the kids, and then this time someone was posting in a Facebook group and said, "Oh, like it'd be great if you could do like a trip for Location Indie Camp Indie." I was like, "Well, actually, I already did one."
We did.
I was like, "Trav, you up for another one?" And then he's like, "Yeah, my wife might have dibs on that one."
Yeah, exactly. It's funny enough. We've been preparing for Kilimanjaro for a little bit. So this past winter, I climbed up Mount Washington in New Hampshire in the middle of winter. So probably a little bit too extreme.
It's pretty extreme. Yeah. I mean, like it may approximate like the last go up for summit day, where you're going from 15,000 to 19,000 plus feet. But yeah, it can get cold. It can get cold and snowy and whatnot. You never know what you're going to get. But for the most part, it's I always tell people it's not like it's not like a killer climb. It's not technical. There's no crampons, no ice picks. It's like you're hiking for days. Generally, we do an 8-day trip, 6 up, 1.5 down, and you're except for summit day, it's not too hard. Elevation sickness can sometimes get to people and cause them to stop climbing or whatnot. But we've gotten everyone up and down the mountain safely, knock on wood. And this summit day sucks. I just tell people, I just straight up, I'm just like, summit day, it's going to suck. You just have to let yourself know, hey, I have to put up with a few hours of suck. and I'm going to get to the top. I'm going to have an awesome story and an amazing achievement that I could tell for the rest of my life. But you got to put up with like a half day of suck.
As far as like endurance levels, like would you say you're walking 8 hours a day as you're
Oh,
approaching the summit?
I would say 6, 7 hours a day. You kind of go around the peak. You go up, down, up, down. You go up to a higher elevation to acclimate yourself, your body. You sleep at a lower elevation so you get better sleep, and you just kind of do that for a few days around the mountain, and then you summit it, and then you go down pretty quick. You lose something like 10,000 feet or so in a day and a half.
Wow, that's pretty intense. Now, if what pathway would you take? I know that there's a couple of different routes to kind of approach the summit. What would you
We
take,
usually do, and we always promote Lemosho because it's got the less number of people. It's a longer trip. It's 8 days. The cost factor isn't really like I tell people, if you got the days to do it, because the cost isn't like a ton more than doing like a 7-day trip up a different path like the Morongo or Machame routes. But it has less people, and especially in the first few days. And also it allows your body more time to acclimate to the elevation. And the more days you have, the higher the success rate is of summiting. So that's why I tell people, you can technically do it in 6. I've even heard 5 days, although I think that's nuts. You can do it in 6 days. You can do it in 7 days. If you got 8 days, just do it. It's like a few $100 more. Like if you're getting all the way over to Africa, you spend all that time and money and the air flight, like just do the 8 days. Trust me. Hey, I've done it. I've climbed it. I've climbed for the 5th time later this year, and so even though it's nothing compared to a lot of the porters and guides on there, like, it's a lot for a foreigner like me. So
No, you're good, man. You're good. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much for hopping on and sharing about your experiences. If someone wants to book a safari, someone wants to go climb Kilimanjaro, what's the best way to find you?
yeah, you just find us at pamojasafaris.com. It's Pamoja, pamojasafaris.com. And you can find us at Pamoja Safaris on all the social media. I'd say we probably use Instagram the most.
Awesome, man. And I know you typically do 1 or 2 safaris a year. So when are you planning to personally go if people are interested? Because I'm sure everyone wants to get to know you now.
Yeah, I always go on our friends and family trip at the end of the year. So I generally spend November, December over there every year to kind of work on the business and to do 1, 2, 3 friends and family trips, and also climb Kilimanjaro. So I always do that. Generally, the friends and family trip starts the Saturday after Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving holiday. So, and then lasts for 8 days.
I might be there with you this year, man.
I hope so. I've been trying to get you to come for years now. Don't let that baby sidetrack you.
I know. No more excuses, man. I got to make it happen. Otherwise, I never will. But Scott, I really, really appreciate this. Thank you so much. I wish you the best of everything on life. I'm so cool. It's so cool that you're working pretty much remotely these days, pretty much forever. So again, thank you so much, man. Thanks for coming on the show, and I hope to see you soon, man.
Thanks for having me.